Hello, everyone. Welcome to the fifth episode of the Curious Storyteller podcast. My name is Blake Kelly. I've been out of it just for a little bit because I had to take some breaks. I've moved across the country, but that's neither here nor there. But I'm really excited to introduce our guest today. Their name, his name, her name is Damon. Damon, I met when I was taking a beginner interpretive or modern dance class. I forget which one it was. And then I followed them on Instagram and I saw that they offered Vogue classes and I was like really intrigued. So I started joining that and we can get into the conversation. But I wanted to introduce Damon to the podcast. Damon, welcome.
Hello, Blake. Thank you very much for having me on. This will be exciting.
Yeah, of course. First off, what are your pronouns as we like to begin?
Yes, I love that. I go by all pronouns: he, they, she, or mother, or daddy, whichever one.
Yeah, depends
Anything
on
respectful.
yeah, I've been playing around with my pronouns. I was they he for a while and then I became they them and I also am I think I'm getting closer to where you are where I'm like I don't care. Like I'm everything.
Yeah,
Call me she, call me they, call me he. I don't care.
everything. Yeah, yeah. It's like a I care, but I don't care. Like if
Right.
you're trying to
Well,
insult me,
right,
I
right.
I care. But if you're trying to like hold me up on a pedestal, I care.
Spoken like a true Leo, right? Um
Exactly. Love it.
well, I think the first question I am very curious about of your life is, I mean, if you're open to it, tell me your origin story of getting involved in voguing because, it historically is a, Black or BIPOC origins in the trans queer community. And I
Yeah.
would just love to hear from you how you got started with it and how that's developed over your life.
Yeah. Thank you. So actually, so I grew up in Champaign, Urbana in Illinois here. Now living in Chicago. But I relocated to Chicago and went to Columbia College, Chicago, art school. I love it. It was great. I got a lot of connections from it. Columbia's very plugged, but that's here nor there. But I got really involved in like the Columbia College scene, like dancing and stuff like that, working on different projects. And I actually had one of my professors that came in during I want to say my sophomore, junior year of college. And he was starting this new kind of like exploration. He had just also had this kind of like run in with like this aesthetic. And prior to that, I had always watched like the Madonna video Vogue, and I was like, oh, I want to learn how to do that. And of course, I like we all are, we're inspired by certain things, and it kind of just like got me going. And I was like, oh, I want to play with this. Let's see what this is. And so then fast forward, running into him, he was trying to start this new movement exploration. And he was looking for people that were just interested in the movement form. Didn't know that there were tons of sources out there for this form. Didn't know that it was like a regular movement practice. So I
Mm,
kind of really wanted to. I got involved in the research of it because I wanted to learn more about the form,
okay.
and the history, and also be able to perform it. And that's kind of how it happened. It was like this project, and the project was always ongoing. Like every year, we would do this and introduce it to different places. We took it to New York, where we fuse voguing and modern dance. Because voguing isn't everything, as I find out later in my research. It's everywhere in our lives, and we don't even realize it.
That's
Yeah,
great. That's so cool.
yeah.
So you were part of it was like a traveling group then?
It was it was a ensemble with one of my it was a small ensemble. He doesn't like to be called a company, so we just call him a little ensemble. Just little research that we did with each other. And we got all these different, he had all these connections because he also danced with a company called BB Miller, and a couple other people, like a lot of freelance stuff. So he was like, I want to go off and do my own little thing for a little bit. So we did that, and we just traveled, had all those connections. It was great. It was wonderful.
Oh, that's so wonderful. And so
Yeah.
like when you got involved and you were able to finally, you said you wanted to get involved, you watched Madonna's Vogue, whatever, like what, if you don't mind me asking, like what did it mean to you? What did it bring up in you? Like what did voguing mean to you in that moment about being able to kind of explore that for yourself?
Well, it was very interesting because when I got into it, I was like, I was very curious to know this form, especially like this kind of like discovering its base roots of like a queer dance form. So I was like, ooh, well, maybe this, because I had already practiced, like, I had 20 years of ballet under my belt, and then I had modern dance and I had jazz training, and I started getting a little bit of African training. And I was like, okay, so I know there's all these dance forms out there, and I think I related to it more so because it was a queer black form, black and brown form. So I was like, let me see what this feels like. Let me see what this is about, and also teach myself about it because this is obviously a part of my community, a part of who I am. So,
Hmm.
so that kind of like spurred me because I was like, oh, this is relatable. This is a queer form. Like, what does it look like? And I mean, it was already fabulous to me because I was like, okay, the girls are fab. I love this. But can I embody that same kind of feeling?
Yeah.
And I kind of fell in love with it. Like, it's kind of like my primary movement practice alongside modern dance. So it's
Mm.
really, 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 I love it. It really feeds my spirit, and it actually helps me in many ways. Like, it helps me uh see my value as a person.
Mm.
Yeah, it really made me see my value and like understand, like, hey, there's more than me out there. There's a bigger world to this. So
Mm.
yeah.
That's so amazing and so important to have that and not only just your feelings but kind of the experience of that as well.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
from my understanding, and you can obviously tell me your perspective on this, is that Vogue as an art form was created as a, I don't know if you declare it a protest, but as sort of like a revolt against the way that Black and brown queer people and trans people had been treated or told that they were supposed to appear or why. And the dance in of itself is a form of resistance or a form of liberation from the way that culture has told them that they aren't allowed to exist in that form.
I 100% agree with everything you just said. I mean, I would have said it the exact same way because yeah, it is it is a rebellion against, these social constructs that we have on our lives. And it's like, and it also rejects this, and it allows them to actually understand their value. And I don't think people give Vogue enough credit when it comes to like the psychology of it all. It's like it's about survival. Like, these people had to survive in life, and to be degraded for so long and be told that you have no value really, and why do you even exist? And they're trying to change you to be in line with the rest of the sheep of the world. Um, it's it's like this form is basically like it just says fuck you. This is who I am, and you're gonna either accept me, and if you don't, then you can kick rocks and keep moving.
Exactly. And I feel that, it also, because it also has ties right to like what I've heard referred to as like it being underground and there being balls and like ballroom scenes of like holding your own community around the pride or the celebration that you all feel that is disconnected from the rest of how everyone else is being perceived. Is that accurate?
Absolutely. Yes. Yes, absolutely. Um, yeah, I think I oftentimes said in class, it's like you're building your community. You're building the word cult is such a, has a negative connotation, but like when you think about it, you're building a cult. A cult is a community of individuals with kind of like a similar mindset that support each other. So, um, this community at just really focused on like the idea of family, you
Mm.
know, that that American dream, as you should say.
Yeah, and like really building a sense of community and family and acceptance, especially I think for, you know, people that have historically been marginalized in that way, to have that kind of
Yeah,
separation.
yeah. Yeah. It's such a beautiful form. I really appreciate it. Um, I think it came into my life in a time where I was trying to, because we're always trying to figure out who we are. And so this form really allowed me to see who I really was. And it actually it took me into a different perspective of my life where I wanted to be a little bit more, not fleeting, but mindful and mindful of other people. Just be a decent human and see everybody's worth, regardless if they don't agree with me or not, they have their reasons for that. And like I like to challenge that or keep the dialogue open and accepting. So, instead of like shooing them away, because marginalized groups were shooed away. So it's like, so we could either join that energy of like, oh, I'm gonna be judgmental, or I'm gonna be a hater and all this other stuff to somebody else, instead of being a little bit more like, okay, I understand why people do these things, even if we don't see eye to eye. So I look at it from not only just the physical, but the mental practice as well.
Yeah, and it feels like to me, it's almost like voguing is a way to externalize the rejection that people might feel around the internalization of
Yes.
that they've had to take in for themselves, that isn't necessarily who they are.
Yes. Yes. Absolutely. You got to have your egos, your alter egos. You got to create it as a way of protecting yourself,
Hmm.
but also, also empowering you to like, oh, I could show up as that. I could be that, and then try and bring it into your character
Yeah,
as a way of protecting you. So, yeah,
absolutely.
it's a great movement form. I highly recommend everybody do it. At least take one class.
Yes, and I think that the other thing too, from my experience of being in class with you, because I started taking Vogue classes with Damon. I don't know, it was sometime last year. I think maybe a little bit more than that. I forget the time range, but
Yeah.
um, it's also about like, to me, it's also very much about getting rid of the spells um of gender issues as well,
Yes.
and the issues around what we perceive to be masculine and feminine, and the power that I think our culture places on what is power and what isn't power based on how you present based in your gender.
Yes. 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 It's like you already know what I was gonna say.
Sorry, maybe I'm leading too much.
No, you're not. You're not. It's great because I mean, I think it's great to hear like you basically have this understanding of like how like my point of view, like we've been able to go into the same space and see that. And being a student and also a educator, like it's great that like it's not like I'm prompting you to say that. It's like you had the experience yourself and you know what that feels like. And
Mm,
that to me is a huge thing because it allows you to be like you're a thoughtful human and you're absorbing um the information, not only just from the physical standpoint, from a mental standpoint, from a spiritual standpoint. So I think that's, you know, that speaks volumes. Not to like pat myself on the back, but like it speaks volumes because, you know, as you know, when I would teach class, you know, I got into my like philosophical body and I wanted to be all philosophical and talk about the form and um make it more than just like a movement practice. Like
Mm,
there's a deep ritualistic
mm,
um practice to what we do. And you know, it's not just a dance form. There's a ritual. There's a lot more to it than what we think of. And that's just dance in general. But this in particular for myself, it's like religion to a Christian or a Buddhist or a Hinduism, any of those. Like it's a spiritual practice.
mm.
That's how I look at it. So
Yeah,
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 it's
that's
great.
that's wonderful. I think that when I, speaking from my experience, when I started taking classes and I had come out as non-binary, I think, I don't know, maybe a year before that or whatever, but I think growing up, in a community where I felt it was very expected to act a certain way as being, assigned male at birth, that I felt that it wasn't about rejecting my feminine side. It was that like there was a sense that that wasn't allowed. And it was just like, it was like there was a rejection towards me based on how I presented from things that could be identified as like feminine qualities or like a feminine way of perspective. And
Yeah.
it was very much rejected. And for me, around like what I felt like I could come up with or how I could be. And a lot of me coming out as non-binary is like been learning about how do it's not about reclaiming it for me. It's about how do I embody it? Like it's about how do
Hmm.
I embody what I think my full spectrum of my identity is, and um how do I feel good and empowered in my feminine energy, and allow myself to feel the power in it as well. And
Yeah.
challenge my own internal process of like what that presentation looks like and whether or not I'm comfortable with it. Because like straight up, when I started, I was like, "Ugh." Like I, I was like, this is uncomfortable. I was like,
Yeah.
I don't know how I'm supposed to act. And then I thought I was like supposed to mimic things. Like there was like so much going on in my head about being like,
Yeah.
what is Vogue? Like, what is Vogue? Like, how,
Yeah.
like, is it a dance move? Is it a 1-2 step? Like, right. And like, I think that for me, the reason why I felt so connected to learning from you is because it wasn't just like, okay, like lift your hips or here's how to catwalk, or it's about like what does this representationally mean for you, and
Mhm.
how do you embody that so that you can move from that authentic movement rather
Yeah.
than from a place of like, okay, like here's how to duck walk, right? Like
Right.
yeah, like I can learn how to duck walk, but if I'm not doing it from the sense of understanding it, then I don't know if I'm actually going to be connected to what I'm doing.
Yes. Yes. And that's something that I feel um when you yeah, that connects into like that real human emotion of um it, it's a gender expression. It's an expression of movement. It's an expression of self. And you know, in order for me uh to just be outwardly vulnerable with people and for people to understand me, I have to embody these. I have to not mimic, but embody these emotions, embody these expressions, and understand, you know, the context in which it comes from. I think, especially when it comes to, you know, this whole social construct of like, even within the queer community, you know, um, how we were always trying to go with this very heteronormative way of life, and you know the whole idea of heteronormativity and like and gay men get, you know, present, you know, it's about masculinity. They want a man and they don't want to sleep with a woman. It's just like, I mean, we all should be embodying our feminine energy. And it's like we just continue to like drive that of like, oh, I mean, you can be attracted to the male gaze or male figure, whatever a male image looks like. But like when it comes to like their character, it's like I feel like, especially, you could present male and you're giving me a male look, but like, oh, but if you have a touch of feminine acting quality, it's like the men that are after that, they're like, oh no, I can't have that. That reminds me too close of a woman. When it's like we all have that ability, and we're all
Mhm.
putting something on. We're all mimicking something.
Mhm.
We all mimic gender. We mimic a gender, and it's like the gender quality, and it's like, well, gender quality, there's strength in feminine quality that people completely miss out on. And like there's actually a lot more strength in feminine quality than there is masculine quality. And I only know that just because I've been able to be in that research and exploring like my feminine energy, and not, and not feeling like, oh, if some other gay man sees me in my feminine state, that they're gonna be like, oh, she's a queen. And I'm like, but then I'm also like, who cares? If you
Mhm.
think I'm a queen, that's not a me problem, that's a you problem. you know? And
Exactly.
it's kind of like affirming for myself to be like, okay, well, I don't have to, put up with someone who's not good energy for me if they don't like that energy. And it's just like there's 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 beauty in that duality. And like who says we can't have that duality, you know?
100%.
Yeah.
100%. And also just the fact that, like, gender as a construct is inherent. And this, I mean, I guess this is my perspective, but like, is kind of inherently made up. Like, we've invented it,
Yeah.
and it
Absolutely.
it can evolve and it can change as we decide for it to change. And that's why I think that gender expression is so almost unique to each person,
Hmm.
because it's a part of your essence and who you are,
Yes.
not about what being feminine is or being masculine is.
Yeah. 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 I definitely think people being able to just freely express themselves regardless, like it's like, why do we even shame each other for like, and the fact that what I've discovered is like just feminine energy has such a negative, degrading connotation behind it. And it's like if we're if we just for a gay man to embody femininity, or any male presenting person to embody femininity, what we're doing is we're also like we're degrading female presenting people that are supposed to present this gender binary. Oh, females are supposed to be this way, and
Hmm.
then those qualities we're shaming.
Hmm.
I mean, we're shaming the very thing that's strong. We're degrading the very thing that is strong in our lives, that nurtures us, and it doesn't make sense. Like the more I dive into it, it's like it really doesn't make sense. This feminine energy we're degrading,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
So anyone who presents female, oh, you're female, you're degrading it. You don't see the power in it, and then especially layered on top of everything else that we have. The fact that we're queer, brown individuals, black people, and it's like, oh, so now you're femme and you're black, and you're this masculine body, this masculine presenting body. It's like, wow, this levels of degradation going on there, and it's just like, okay. And of course that's why people deal with mental illnesses, because there's all these like instilled traumas that are going on, which is not, you know there are times when I was younger and I just felt, you're like, oh, when I was a feminine boy. I actually thought about transitioning. I was going to school with like braids in my head and like makeup on my face, and wearing somewhat feminine clothes. I consider myself a gay trans tomboy. I was like, but I put on that expression. But what was really fascinating is that because I carried it with confidence and I had people could see the strength behind when I entered somewhere. Um, in high school, I never got picked on, which was really great. A lot of people were just like, "Oh yeah, we love him," and blah 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 blah. I was like, "That's great. I love you too," but I'm gonna keep it moving. And I was kind of like in my own world and not really paying mind to anybody else's or allowing people to degrade me to make me feel like a less than human. And when they did, they felt a little bit of heat. They felt a little bit of Leo fire. And I was like, don't, you will catch it. Don't catch it. I don't want you to catch it because it's not cute.
Mm, mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think what I'm hearing you say is that as you were in this time period, like this also helped you feel embodied in who you were.
Yes.
And it seems like also that maybe when voguing came into your life, it was like a further deepening of that practice for you, or exploration of the multiplicity of your experience and your gender.
I feel like, yeah, it put a name to my expression basically. And it allowed me to, I was already a pretty like I put on the facade a lot when I was younger of like strength, but I felt like a little crumbling little human inside. Like I felt depressed as we do, especially when we're going through um, puberty and things. But I think having the affirmation of Vogue really helped me later on because as I came into myself, I was like, okay, this is who I am. And I can't just cut myself to fit for somebody just for somebody to like me. People are gonna like me, people are gonna hate me. People are gonna think I'm mediocre, and that's totally fine. People are gonna think I'm fab, and I just need to be okay with that for myself,
Mm,
you know? And I think that's why, like for myself, going with how I identify across the board is like as long as you're respecting me, I don't care if you call me she, he, they, mama, papa, you know, cunt, any of those things, you know?
yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
And to name, I don't know, like to name a little bit of what you were saying too is like it seems to me that you were facing a lot of like challenges from society based on how it was that you were expected to show up on the multiplicity of your identities that
yeah,
were placed on you, and you were trying to say, let me be me,
yeah, yeah, yeah. And um, yeah, that's pretty much what but what's really great about this form is um, that you know, we don't think about it, but I kind of trained myself to be like a chameleon,
Mm,
which is another really good trait to have. They oftentimes call it code switching,
mhm,
but I get to take my personality, and what's really unique is I get to go into these different spaces of people that wouldn't know who I am, wouldn't know, but I've trained myself to be like, oh, and voguing has allowed me to do that too. Like putting a name to what I'm doing, like, oh, I can go into a room and really code switch. That way I can go in, be this chameleon in this space. I can fit in, I can navigate, and it makes my improvisational skills when I go into a space that much stronger. So then I can read a room and be like, okay, this is what the atmosphere is giving. And
mm,
so then I can go in, I can put that on, or I can be like, oh, I'm gonna pay it, or I'm gonna do this. It's such a really unique trait that I value a lot. And then sometimes I like to go into those spaces and be like, I'm gonna screw with everybody in here.
oh, that's so
Wow,
wonderful.
flip everybody upside down. Because I present what they want me to present, and then it's the exact opposite. And it's really fun because I get to do that even I find myself doing it even on the street, or if I go to the gym or a festival, it's like, you know, I'll put on a personality. Like we put on these costumes.
Mm-hmm.
I put on my personality, and then I walk outside, and then people see something, then I'll, you know, say something intellectual, and people are like, "Wait, what? Did that come out of your mouth?" Or the exact opposite, and or be feminine in a very uh masculine space,
Yeah.
which I truly love to do, which is like I miss going to very a mixed crowd when I would go to like an event or go out to a bar or something. I love going into like those mixed crowds and presenting what they want me to present. And
Mm-hmm.
then like they'd be like, wait, what? Did you just really just do that?
Mm. I think I love what you're talking about here because something that I've tried to be playful with and think about in my own life is like authenticity versus performance and
Uh-huh.
the balance between those. And I think that it's because I grew up, I don't know, in a queer space where I felt like I could never be authentic. I've like
Yeah.
overemphasized sometimes the need to be authentic all the time. And
Yeah.
I think that it like it's almost like I don't want to say I've overcompensated, but I think it's like allowed me to be like, okay, but like you don't always have to be, like I can be playful in those situations and I don't have to be like this is who I am all the time.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's kind of like I don't know, that's kind of like what I'm hearing from you a little bit of like you can kind of play with the situation a little bit and
Yeah.
and it doesn't have to be so like oh I'm not being truthful or honest or whatever because I was like I don't owe people things.
No, you don't owe anybody anything, really.
Yeah.
Like we all just need to like and putting on an expression, like you can perform it or you don't have to. You can be authentic, but like you don't need to explain yourself. Like
Mm-hmm.
in that moment, in that time, is like that's what you want to do. And it's like you don't have to read into it in any other kind of way. It's like, if I want to be a little loud, obnoxious Leo, I'm gonna be a loud, obnoxious Leo. And
Mm-hmm.
if I want to be that reserved, oftentimes people see me, and that's something that I always play with as well for myself. I'm always like, okay, when do I need to turn off my Leo, like that performative energy? But I feel like there's so many different levels of performance that, the only time I'm truly, really thinking about like my auth, I don't know. I don't know how to explain that.
No, I hear what you're saying. I hear what you're saying.
Yeah.
Yeah. I hear what you're saying. But I also wanted to make the point too that maybe like voguing allows you maybe the multiplicity or the duality between I'm
Yes.
performing, but I'm also my authentic self at the same time.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
And
Yes. Yes. Yes.
I think that's what's actually drawn me so much to Vogue because sometimes in dance classes where I've struggled before is I feel
Mhm.
like it's too like move your hip this way and like whatever and then I'm like so caught up in the movement of moving my hip a certain way that I'm like I'm not
Yes.
dancing, I'm like routining. And
Yeah.
then I get in my head and I'm like, oh, like my shoulder goes this way, and then it just it like it doesn't come out correctly. And if you look at me, I'm not like dogging myself, but it looks a little like a little robotic, you know what I mean? And
But I
I
think
think
some techniques do that.
yeah, yeah. And I think that for me, like dancing and authentic expression and what drew me to Vogue and even modern dance when I took the class with you is like learning to just move my body in the way that it feels right to, but also in some sort of structure, right? Like
Yeah.
it doesn't have to be full structure, but some structure.
Yeah.
And I feel like voguing for me really allowed that both like I am doing something specific but I'm also allowing my own sense of what I want to perform come out and that
Yes.
I've had to like through when I started I had to kind of go on breaks because I would get too like obsessed or I would get too like okay like this is how this movement goes or this is what this is and I got like two in my head and I'd be like no I have to put this down because otherwise I'm gonna like to think about it too much and then I
Yeah.
would come
Yeah.
back to it and I'd be like okay 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 like this
Yeah.
this makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. I think that's something that the form it plays into everyday life. I think I've said it a couple times when you were in class too. It's like what we do, the philosophies that I use within classes should be able to carry over into real life. So the fact that this is an improvisational dance form, I should be able to improvise throughout my life, right? That's that chameleon that I was talking about, going into the real world and being like, I'm gonna be a chameleon. You know,
Mhm.
I know the general form. I know what's there. Now let me put my stank on it, you know, put my little craftiness on it, um, and go into this space and show up as myself, or whether I want to show up in my vulnerability or my performance mode, or let them
Mhm.
live in that duality together. So, yeah, I think out of a lot of the forms, because there's never a really set choreography with voguing. Um, there's really never set choreography with voguing, so you get to um, you get to create. You know the form. You get to stylize it. You need to get to put your expression on it, which is beautiful.
Yeah,
It's a
absolutely.
little bit more helpful.
Yeah, and you get to put your own personal, you get to put your own personality into it.
Yeah, yeah, it's great.
Um, and I think I'm really grateful that you were able to offer that kind of space while I was able to do it because, I think that even when I was doing it, I was like, is what I'm doing even voguing, right? Like, is what I'm doing even is my authentic expression, can that be matched with what the dance is? And like, if it doesn't match, what does that look like? And not from a space of like needing to, I don't know, like needing to catwalk the best way possible, but like in a way where I'm kind of embodying it. And that was just really helpful for me.
Yeah, yeah, and I think I agree with you. Like you know the basic form of it. You know what it looks like, and if you can, if you can give me a little bit of that, but a lot of you, like that to me is voguing.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you know what a catwalk looks like.
Mm-hmm.
As long as you know how to swing them hips and get into your feminine energy, and like going deeper. It's one of those things that I feel like we, again, going back to this whole like gender assignment, you know, we for for the female presenting individuals or female energy, this is what a female body has to, this is how it has to move through space. It's just, if I'm trying to convince the world that I am presenting female, like what is that energy that I need to put on my body? Or if
Mm-hmm.
what is the energy I need to put on me for a
Mm-hmm.
masculine presenting body?
Yeah.
It's like it's great. It's more based on those gender assigned characteristics
Mm-hmm.
than anything.
Mm-hmm.
Like I have to be passing, you
Mm-hmm.
know. If I'm gonna be a butch queen, what is a butch queen? You
Right.
know,
And you
what
get
is a twister?
Yeah, yeah, and you can kind of play around with what that is for you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, is there anything that you would like to talk about like the history of Vogue, or anything that you would like to share with people who may not know, or just anything that people that are listening right now that are like, like, oh, I've seen Pose, but like, I don't really know, what this is or how it works.
Yeah. The only thing that I would want to say is that there are resources out there. And I think for for commercial reasons, a lot of people see the surface of what Vogue is. And like I did when I was younger, I was like, I saw the Madonna video and didn't dive deep enough into the research until later. But I only recommend that people really, really, if you're interested in Vogue, do the work. Do like the work is so important. Um, that's also going to help you with the execution when you decide you want to participate in this, and down to like the language of it. Like there's so much language out there that is it's washed. It, like when people are, calling a dip a death drop, you gotta, like, you can't call that Vogue, if you realize that's not even the word that we use in the community, but like knowing your elements, knowing, and it's not like you have to, because there's so many icons, there's so many pioneers, there's so many legends. If you know a few of them, that's great. Um, but I feel like you should know the community in which you're dealing with, right? You need to understand the community. You need to um, understand their perspective, listen to their stories. Because everybody has a story, and a lot of their stories are very beautiful and sacred, and they're allowing us to view them. So it's like invest in that. There's
Mm-hmm.
nothing wrong with like investing. It's okay to look at video clips. It's okay to um look at look at shows. There's more than even just like Pose and like Legendary. There's so many other. There's I think it's called My House, which was an FX. I believe it was streamed on FX, but there's Vogue so many more Vogue references out there, um, that do the research. That's all I'm gonna say. Do the research.
Mm-hmm.
It's That's a way of supporting the community
Yeah.
and like explore it. And you know what? And like I tell you all in class, like it's okay to embarrass yourself. It's okay to embarrass yourself. That way you learn. Like it's okay to go into a class and be scared. I mean, I was freaked out when I first started doing it. I was
I
like, oh my God,
mean,
what am I
yeah.
doing?
When I started, I was like, I'm embarrassing myself every second I'm here. Like,
But it was beautiful because you were invested. And I
yeah.
feel like a lot of people are learning Vogue and they're like, oh, they go to one class and like, I know how to Vogue now. And I'm like, oh baby. That's insulting to any Voguer because a lot of Voguers have been Voguing for a while and they have been researching, doing the physical and mental research. And you think you just got it in one class and you calling that Voguing? Don't do that.
Of course.
But in that same breath, I welcome and I invite people. I'm not the only one who said this. People in the community have said this. Vogue is for everyone.
Mm-hmm.
Ballroom isn't,
Mm-hmm.
but Vogue is for everyone as
Mm-hmm.
long as they do the research and they're not shamming it. They're not being fake about it. Like be authentic.
Yeah, yeah. I'm really glad that you brought that up too, because I think there is a distinction to be made between maybe voguing and ballroom and the differences and what that really means. Because especially as someone that when I even reached out to you, I was like, can I even come to this class? Like, is that okay? Like,
Yeah.
I don't want to show up and feel like I'm just like, okay, like cultural appropriation, time for me to time for me to learn this thing. And then
No.
yeah.
Well, and it's crazy because I don't think a lot of people know there are a lot of white presenting people that are voguing, you know? And the beautiful part about it is that they're not trying to steal any kind of spotlight. They're also just going on the journey and doing the research and feeling like it's their community. I mean, there's so many individuals that I know that are white presenting, that are going into these spaces and they're supporting. And that's the biggest thing is like supporting. It's the commercial girls that want to come out here and be like, I'm gonna learn how to do a death drop. I'm gonna go out here and learn how to do a death drop, a dip. And then I'm gonna go take this out on the street and do this and be like, yeah, I'm voguing girls. And I'm like, I mean, there's been so many spaces, and I'm not gonna call anybody out specifically, but there's been some spaces I've gone to where the kids are doing dips, and I'm like, what are y'all doing? What is happening? First of all, you're blowing your back out and you don't have the right mechanics. I'm like, child, be careful. And then you're just flopping around like a car wash balloon man. And I'm like, you can't call that voguing. that is shady.
Oh, that's so funny. That's so funny. Is there anyone specific that you would like to call out as people to look into, or icons or historical people that you think people should know about that they can like lead into their exploratory journey?
You know, some people have their favorite people.
Mm-hmm.
I have such an appreciation for everybody in the community that there's no, I mean, of course, right now we see like, like Honey Balenciaga or Naomi, or there's so many other, or like,
Even like Anitra on the last season of Drag Race doing duck walks, right? And that was like a huge
yeah,
part of her performance.
yeah. I mean, there's those people. I just feel like, yes, anybody who's an icon, anybody who's a legend, like look out for them. Like, because acknowledging their existence is bigger than just like knowing any specific person. Also, think about the pioneers, like, look into the pioneers. There's not any specific pioneer um, that I would say, but there's so many out there. And I think if you catch one name and then just go down a rabbit hole and just start investing in them, you
Yeah.
know? And just go into it. I appreciate everybody who practices the form, whether there's someone who's the it girl or not. Like, I appreciate them all. I actually just did a post earlier because I saw one of my favorite Voguers, Star Revlon, who I love a lot. I just love her performance energy, and she's also sickening, and her drag is sickening. Her Vogue performance is sickening. Her presence is just sickening, and she's also like a stylist and a designer. So
Mm,
she's embodying all these things that I'm sure the world has told her she couldn't do, and she's
yeah.
doing it, you
Yeah.
know? So there's just people like that. Like, I love Star Revlon a lot. There's so many other people that, Deshaun Wesley, or actually he's in, Deshaun is in, oh my goodness, why would I forget what house?
It's okay.
Uh, it's there.
Yeah. You said their name.
Yes, Deshaun. It used to be Deshaun Wesley, but it's oh my God, I cannot. Balmain? No,
That's okay.
Balmain. Yeah,
Is it?
yeah. I think it's Balmain. That's awful. I'm an awful person. But yeah, there's
So
just so many out there.
yeah, so my next question is like, what caused you to, or when did you decide that you were going to start teaching Vogue? And like, yeah, tell me about that process a little bit, right? Because like you said you had an ensemble with some people. Obviously, you've been practicing it, and then how did you get from there to being like, I'm going to start teaching it? Because I feel like you kind of in some ways you kind of have to seek it out a little bit. At least I kind of felt like I had to seek it out when I was like finding it, right? And
Yeah,
it's sort of one of those things where it's not like plastered on the wall being like join Vogue classes today. You know what I mean?
yeah, yeah, yeah. It was totally um it was interesting. So I had been doing this research project with Darrell Jones for a while, and Jason Howard. We were all in this ensemble, and and I was like, "Oh, I'm loving this form. This is so great." And I started to embody it. At that time, I had been studying it for probably 6 or 7 years, maybe a little bit more. And I was like, you know what? This would be so cool to be able to really like share this experience with others. And then I also like I was actually looking for places where I could go that were like commercialized studios.
Yeah.
And there were a couple times when I went to New York, and I took class with Archie, um, who is amazing, old way instructor, pioneer, or icon, just amazing. Um, and I was in New York. I took it at Broadway. I think it's called Broadway Dance Center. And I was just like, oh my God, I love this. And he just like, he was like, oh, when I was in class, he was like, oh, so you play, don't you? I was like, I play a little bit, but not like you. He was like, oh, you play. It's okay. I was like, it was very affirming to hear Archie say that to me. So I was like, oh yeah. And so just to see the joy in his face, kind of like of teaching, it kind of like helped guide me into like, I want to with share this with people.
Mm,
Um, and also noticing in Chicago that there was no place that offered, these urban styles and forms as a regular reoccurring class.
mm-hmm.
It was always like workshop here, workshop there. And I was like, I'm done with just workshops. I
Yeah.
want to be able to go to a class all the time.
Yeah.
Just like, it's like hip hop. Hip hop became the studios in the regular became a part of the curriculum um in the studios. But there was all these other forms, like sometimes depending on what studio you went to, there was jazz or, there was always ballet, but like West African dance, like traditional Indian dance, Bollywood, any of those
Mm,
forms, they were all like workshops or like a heels class, a workshop. Now those forms have become reoccurring in
mm-hmm.
studios. But when I was getting into it, I was like, you know what? There's nothing like that around Chicago. I think I want to open a studio and try and cater to those forms and get those forms in a space to where other people that are interested will come and take classes and teach classes and vice versa. And so that's kind of how I kind of pushed myself into it.
Mm-hmm.
Pushed
Yeah, and
myself
to
into
offer,
teaching.
and also I'm hearing to offer kind of that space to not only have it consistently, but also a place for people to kind of explore and figure that out too. Because
Yes. Yes. That's a
obviously, go ahead.
yeah, sorry. That's a big thing that I always wanted people to be able to just explore the forms.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and because I feel like, especially when it comes to dance, we don't get to really explore other forms. We have this again, the whole this socially acceptable movement practice. You have the jazz, you have ballet, and not to knock those, and those are great, but it's like there are way more dance forms than just ballet and jazz and modern. There's hip hop, there's West African dance, there's traditional Indian dance, there's traditional Japanese dance forms, and there's house dance. There's all these other forms, and not only just that, but there's also these beautiful queer forms that are out there that one aren't acknowledged as queer forms. So I wanted to be that kind of space that says, hey, these people exist, these forms exist, these practices exist.
Mm-hmm.
So I decided to be like, you know what? And I'm gonna lead with Vogan.
There you go. There you go. And also offering that as a space to say like we're here, and like
Yeah,
this deserves just as much practice and intention as another style of dance.
exactly. Exactly. And
Hmm.
I'm glad that I was able to offer that to the public that was looking for it, because I had done the research and I had ties in with people from the ballroom scene. And I wanted to be able to have the ballroom scene coming in as well as like having fresh faces come in and like they start having a dialogue together so they can build a community and support, like build the community and make it bigger.
Yeah.
So, and it was a slow process. But I have to say, especially before the pandemic, class sizes were really small, and then like towards as we got closer to the pandemic, class sizes started to increase,
Mm.
and then like when we hit the second year of the pandemic, people were like, "I gotta get out, I gotta dance, I need something for my mental health," and I was like, "Let's go, let's rack it up," and then classes just became like a thing. And I was like, wow, this is fantastic. And been holding strong for 2 years, which is great. 3 years,
Yeah.
so it's good.
Yeah. Yeah. And I guess I'm just saying I'm grateful to have been part of it while I was in Chicago. And I miss it a little bit.
Aww.
I miss
We miss having you.
oh, what'd you
If
say?
we could, if I could just, huh?
What'd you say?
I said we miss having you in class with
Oh,
us.
oh, thank
I
you.
wish I wish I was smart enough to invent a teleportation device
Device.
that got you here to take class, and
I
then
could just take class. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
you
There
just
is
don't take class.
I did find a class here in Seattle, and I've only been
Beautiful.
once. So um it's just transferring over to that and kind of exploring that as well.
Yeah, it's always good to have different practitioners in your world to see their teaching methods. And then
Absolutely.
also just to learn their methods too, because everybody has different methods, which is really
Hmm.
we should all be exploring.
The one thing that I have learned, I think the most from like a body movement is just how much I think I need to strengthen my back. Because man, after class, I swear my lower back, I'm like, oh, like it's so tense afterwards. And
Oh
I
yeah.
have to really strengthen my lower back. And my yoga practice has been kind of like what is typically involved with that, so I can strengthen it. But I injured
Hmm.
my shoulder and that's kind of messed the stuff up. So um but yeah, I'm realizing how much I'm like, man, I really need to strengthen my back and my abs a little bit.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's dance is a lot of work, but it's also it's physically good work, you
Hmm.
know.
Hmm.
Um Strengthening your back using your glutes more, you know. That's a whole big thing. And also you're a long person. So you got to work a little bit more than we do.
Yeah, especially when you're like, oh, like get, like bend your knees. I'm like, no, I have to bend my knees more than you have to bend your knees.
You sure do.
Like, like, like I was like, I have to do this a little bit more intensely than you do. So
Oh yeah. You're like, my bend, I almost have to go into a duck walk
a
in
little
order to
bit,
get to your
yeah.
level.
Like, man, I tell you though, after I did class on the class here I did in Seattle, my body for like 3 days was like, what is happening? Like it was like I like my thighs and my calves were so tight and so
Oh
I was
no.
like okay, I think maybe I overdid it a little bit.
You got a little too excited.
Yeah, I did. I did. Yeah, but we are coming up on an hour, and that's typically the time range that I like
Yeah.
to leave because otherwise people kind of drift off, and it's too much for them to listen to.
Yeah.
Is there anything you'd like to share that you would like to share before we wrap up?
Not really. Just get y'all butts to classes.
Yes. If you want, you can like say your Insta or how to find you or your dance studio or when classes are if people are
Oh
interested.
yeah. Yeah, if anybody is traveling, so the studio I teach at is TEXTUREDance Studio. Or if you want to follow me on Insta, my Insta is DMRC Textured, with a D at the end. You can find me on there, or you can also find TEXTUREDance Studio on Instagram. But yeah, contribute to more urban styles and forms dances and get in these dance classes because it's good for your mental health.
Absolutely. Um, that's super great. Well, thank you so much, Damon, for joining and having this conversation on voguing and your life and just sharing a little bit about yourself.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate you. I wish you were still here.
Oh, thank you.
I'll have to come out and visit.
You're welcome anytime. I can, I've only been here for 2 months, but I'm sure I can show you around.
I love it. Anything will help. All
Awesome.
right.
Well, if you guys have any comments on, or if you want to share your feedback, you can also do that with me. My Instagram is Curious Storyteller. That's my personal. And then for this podcast, it is Curious Storyteller Pod. And you feel free to reach out to us or leave any comments as well. We'd love to hear it. And we look forward to the next episode with you. I hope you have a great day. Bye.